Okay. So the word I was searching for is restlessness, which is like agitation. And restlessness is, oops. You know, that feeling that shows up where, you know, when we're in life and we're super bound, you know, you're just like, you've been just busy. Your mind's been busy all day. You've been doing so much, right? Go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to ask you to sit in meditation, be still. Your mind still wants to be busy. And so you'll feel restless, like, I got to be doing something, I got to be doing something. And that's a really hard shift to make. And so, you know, restlessness can absolutely pull us away from our center. It's, you know, I had somebody the other day with a yoga class. You know, I sent them a text, hey, you should come and come to my yoga class today at this time. And then they sent me back, oh, you know, I've got so much on my plate. I'm just so, you know, all these reasons not to do it. And, you know, there's that saying that if you can't sit for 10 minutes, then you need to sit for 40, right? Because really, again, when we allow this restlessness to take over, that's one of the hindrances. That's one of the things that we need to battle. And that doesn't mean, if it's in its full form, we're in a place where we, you know, in life we have these, you know, we're busy, we've got to do, so we find ourselves in this place all the time. And oftentimes we can't go from going 100 miles an hour to a full stop. So there is that easy way to kind of move from like, say, going 100 miles an hour. Maybe you were running. Imagine that, you know, you're running, you're going. You don't want to just stop, but maybe you slow down, you start to walk. You know, and then, you know, from walking, it's like, okay, now I can stand, and then maybe from standing, now I can sit, and then from sitting, you lay down. So there is this progression that might be necessary, and you want to notice that too. What level am I at in any of these hindrances, and how can I kind of taper back and get myself to a place? Because if you demand that you're in a state of high restlessness, and you're going to ask yourself to sit and be still, you're going to go crazy. You know, and I hear that all the time from people. No, I can't sit and meditate. I can't, no. It just doesn't work for me. My mind's just too busy. Okay, well, we've got to figure out a way to anchor it. And I've done a lot of Buddhist retreats where you stay in the temple for weekend at a time. And when you're doing that, a lot of the meditation, I mean, the whole time it's a vow of silence. So the whole time you have to anchor into this connection of, okay, I've got to be still. But they don't let you, even when the meditation is over and you're walking around, we're still very much in that state of not allowing the mind to become restless. As you're walking, you're doing a walking meditation. You're not looking around and making eye contact with people. You're not doing anything to stimulate the mind. You're keeping the mind very, very quiet. And then it's easy to come back into that meditation again, because I haven't done anything to create a restlessness around, you know? Nothing to create thought, nothing to direct my mind into all of this excitement or anything. And so that's why they do those weekend retreats, for the sake of, okay, so I'm going to pull you away from all of the craziness, and then it's easier to come into this space. And then when you're in that space, you get to notice, are these hindrances showing up? As I'm sitting here, am I experiencing ill will? Am I feeling agitated? Am I feeling... And then the last one, and this one, it's kind of weird, archaic terms. Not very many people use this anymore, but sloth or torpor, which is more commonly known as like dullness of the mind, which is tired. Like, you know, and oftentimes we can be super tired in the physical body, and then you sit down to meditate and you're just going to want to go to sleep, right? And it's really hard to actually distinguish too. Am I tired in the physical body, or am I just having dullness of the mind? Am I bored? And I'm letting my mind be in boredom, and then that's creating that exhaustion in my body, you know. And you know, I've been. This is one that's really been coming up, obviously, as I'm sick. So dealing with this is a really easy thing to slip into. When you're sick, you just want to not move. you know, you want to sit into that sloth, and that's, but the more that we sit into that space of not moving, it becomes harder and harder to find that energy again and elevate the energy. So sometimes, again, if it's not that you've just not had enough sleep, you know, and you really are tired, which can be the case, if that's not the case, you know, you've had adequate sleep, then it could just be that dullness of the mind. When we're in a state of boredom, there's nothing that's stimulating the mind, and so I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm gonna feel tired, and so these two are kind of you know, they battle one another. You're either in that one place, you could be restless and agitated, mind too busy, or mind is too slow, and then you're falling asleep. And this is something that is true in life, you know, in general. I do a lot of talks where I discuss like happiness and how noticing the levels of prana in the body and how we affect our prana, you know, and some of the things that affect your prana, or prana, another word for that is just vital life force energy. So it's kind of the energy levels. You know, somebody with high prana is like somebody who's like super enthusiastic, go team, you know, high energy, excitement. You know, somebody with lower energy is going to be more easily into this space of sloth and torpor, dullness of the mind, not very excited or excitable. So let's quickly talk about that. We'll talk about how we can counter some of these. So let's discuss sloth and torpor. What are some ways that you can battle those things as it shows up in your life? If you're noticing just in general, your energy's low, you're in this space of like, I'm just wanting to be sleepy all the time. What are some things that you can do to maybe shift that? Move, get your body moving. So movement, exercise.
Make sure you do get enough sleep.
Yeah. Okay, enough sleep. And
find things that are really interesting to you.
Okay, do something that you get passionate about,
Yes.
or okay, find your passions and maybe study, read, get excited about something, gather information, gain more. I want you to ask yourself this on movement, exercise, and enough sleep. Can those be out of balance the other way? So if you have too much exercise or too much sleep, could that cause this as well? Yeah, so sometimes you get in that habit where it's like, no, I need like 15 hours sleep, but really that just makes you more tired. And so kind of noticing that there's that that balance. What are some other things? Nutrition, food. Yeah, proper nutrition. So food in general is a good one, right? Because the right foods can elevate your energy, but certain foods can lower it. Right? If we eat a big heavy meal and then you go to do your yoga practice or you go to meditate, you know, what's going to happen? You'll be like super, I just want to take a nap right now. Like, when will this be over? It's really hard to pull through that. So the right food, right? Like, and we kind of know what that is. If I laid foods out, you'd be like, no, this is going to be a light food. This is going to energize me. This is not. So picking the right foods. Is there anything else comes to mind? I mean, these are all good, and this is a really good, you know, example of ways that you can prepare yourself, or just acknowledge, hey, I'm having this experience of dullness of mind. Here's maybe some things that I can do to counteract it. You know, I can stimulate my mind in some way. I can, you know, check, you know, am I eating the right foods? Have I gotten enough sleep? Or have I gotten too much? Those sort of things. So it's starting to notice that. The ways that we would conquer some of these other guys as they're showing up, sensory desire, for example. So sensory desire is a tough one, because, you know, this can show up you know, I mean, in our practice, imagine that you're practicing yoga, and then, you know, we can have maybe desires show up. Hey, that person's really cute, or you know, there could be that. You know, sensory desire shows up in so many ways. If you're meditating, it could be, you know, you're thinking about food. Like I said, maybe you're hungry, and suddenly that starts to happen. I was listening to a talk one time from a monk when I was on one of these weekend retreats, and it's funny because they rely on people to bring them their food, so they have no idea when the food's coming, you know, or if it's coming, you know. So they have to get used to eating sometimes just one time a day, and they don't know what it's going to be, who's going to bring it. And then they're doing these meditations all day, and then these thoughts come in of hunger, and it's really easy to kind of step into that sensory desire and let that take over. And again, maybe just one thought of, that food would be nice, and then you just let it go and dismiss it. You don't give it more, but then you give it more thoughts, like, I wonder if so-and-so is going to come and they're going to bring that one thing that I really like, and you know, oh my gosh, that would be so great. And then you start feeding it, and then it grows. And then if that person doesn't come, you're super disappointed, right? And so this is how in like a meditation practice or in our yoga practice, that sensory desire can pull us away from it. In life, sensory desire shows up and draws you in so many ways. It can impact us. I mean, that shows up as addictions oftentimes, right? If we do it too much, if you're feeding that desire and you're allowing it to get overwhelming. So with food, I mean, this happens like with alcohol, like all desires, people are like, well, desire's fine, you know, and it starts out that way because it's in that little subtle form. Yeah, it's okay, you know, you have a drink. And people are like, no, it's fine, yeah, I'm just having a drink. And then they get into, you know, several drinks, and then all the time drinking, and then all of a sudden we all know probably at least one person who's got a battle with alcoholism and how it's impacted their life. And that, again, you know, food, same thing. You know, it's just, it can easily, if we just keep feeding that monster, it can come overwhelming, and that can also be in sexual desire as well. And the Buddha would say that any desire is like pulling a loan from the bank. I call it the karma bank, but the Buddha says you're pulling a loan from the bank. You got to pay it back. So yeah, you have that really great experience. Okay, now you're going to have to pay it back. There's always the equal and opposite fall back. And then we just want that more again, because now we're back here again. You know what I mean? Are you guys following the desire thing? Like when we, you know, all of a sudden you have that great sexual experience and everything's fantastic, and then that person's gone, you know, and you're like, what, you know, thinking about that, or the alcohol or whatever, and then we start wanting it again. So the way that they say that you counter this is, you know, thinking of something different that is less appetizing. Like I was so in particular, the Buddha would say that you would think about, you know, grossness of the body. Think about, you know, the insides of your body, like, you know, bones and skin and, you know, the muscle tissue, or gross things, right, within the body. And suddenly you're turned off. And I mean, if you think about the fact, like imagine you're about to eat a meal and then suddenly you sit down and you see something gross on the TV, you're like, I'm not hungry anymore, right? So it's a good quick way to resolve that desire that shows up in the mind or in the experience. Try and turn away from it. With ill will, the way that ill will is countered, and this is actually the way I counter everything. This has been my go-to for, I don't even know how many years now. It's literally changed my life. It would be the thing that I would urge you to do. Out of all of this whole talk, the one thing you walk away from is this, please. And it's the metta meditation. Familiar? Yeah, metta meditation. It's a loving kindness meditation. Have you heard it termed that way? So in, you know, a lot of practices, in the Buddhist practice, loving kindness meditation. So you just anchor into the space of your heart, into your energy of kindness and compassion and love. And, you know, you can look it up, and for me, it freed me from pretty much everything. If I'm in the space of love and I'm just feeling compassion and love and connecting in that way, how can I feel desire in that space? How can I feel ill will? You know, even for the people that I felt like, that's my first go-to. If somebody in my life is showing up in a way that it feels like they're harming me or wanting to cause harm, I'm going to sit down and go into a meditation. It's where I discovered going into my weekend retreats, going to the temple and sitting for a whole day, meditating, and I would sit there, and honestly, that's all I would do. Just emanate love and kindness. And I would think of those people and imagine sending them nothing but blessings and wishing that they were smiling and happy and experiencing love and knowing. And those are people that were in that exact moment wanting harm on me. But I would send them love and blessings. And it's freedom. You just feel liberated. You know, and I would mean it. Eventually, you know, that's the goal, to get to a place where you really feel that, you know. It's easy to express love for our children. It's easy to express love for, you know, your pets, or you know, somebody else's pet even. So that's easy. Okay, so then we step it up a little bit, and that's what loving kindness meditation does. It's like, okay, but now I want you to think about all the people that are maybe feeling hurt right now. Okay, that's easy too. Now we want everybody to, if you're hurt or you're hungry or you don't feel loved, I want you to feel loved. That's easy. Okay, now extend it to people that, you know, have hurt you. You know, people that have caused you struggle in your life. Maybe, you know, caused you big harm. Can you send them love? And when I started to do this in my life, it was like it healed all these old wounds. You know, suddenly those people that had held power over me didn't anymore. So it frees you from a lot. So doubt, you know, hopelessness, and again, that shows up oftentimes in a super heavy way, you know, and so it's just really finding faith. Stepping into, okay, sometimes for people with doubt, it's like, if I just have enough information up front, I can counter that right away. You know, pretend that if you feel safe in my hands as a yoga teacher, you're going to have less doubt. And, you know, so you're going to move through your practice, and that's probably not going to come up because you're going to trust in me as your teacher. You know? And so that takes, you know, you may be doing the research ahead of time. No, everybody says Debbie does a great job. People have said this, this, and this. Okay, now you've sort of subsided your doubt, and you can come into that space, and you don't have to have that showing up as much. And but really, the idea isn't to find more information. Oftentimes, more information will cause more reason to doubt. So the more that we search for, you know, information, then there's more stuff there, you know, showing up in doubt. I had today, you know, as far as restlessness, I was teaching a class just before I came here, and it was a woman that was brand new to yoga, brand new to hot yoga, so all those elements coming at her, and I've taught, you know, thousands and thousands of classes in the hot room, you know, owning a hot yoga studio, so I've had that experience. So I've been with lots and lots and lots and lots of people that are brand new. And so I see this over and over again, and I try and counter it usually up front. I'll have a talk with them. There's a little bit of a language barrier with this one, so it wasn't as fluid, being able to prepare her. And I like to prepare people because you're gonna walk into that room and there's gonna be a zillion doubts. And it's going to be all the information that you've been told over your lifetime start to show up. Hey, my heart rate isn't supposed to get this high. The doctor said over 10 minutes and 110 degrees is not healthy. I remember the first time I practiced, and all those things came up, and I was like, am I going to die? I don't think this is the right thing. And doubt, 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 doubt. And what happens is you start to feed it, and suddenly you really feel the experience of I'm going to die. And it's why they say that the one thing that you should do at your first time taking that yoga class, even if you lay down on the floor, is stay in the room. Stay in the room so you can listen to all those thoughts, let them, but at the end you're going to walk out of the room and you're going to know I lived. And then next time there'll be less doubt. So we've conquered this hindrance, and when you start to do that, you start to take that into your life, right? It shows up in every aspect of your life. We can kind of release from some of that doubt as things show up, and you're like, no, I think I'll be okay. I think I'll make it through. I'm going to be okay, and you learn how to deal with that. And so what she was experiencing today is that restlessness. I mean, she got up and started walking. I had to physically lay her down. I could see her mind just buzzing and going, and I just asked her to stay there through the whole class, and you're gonna be fine. And you kind of have to be with the restlessness. So and next time hopefully it will go away. And so, I mean, all of these things can happen in a yoga class, right? If you've done a yoga class, all of these things can show up. And, the sensory desire, we could just be drawn to, hey, what's going over here? We're just discontent with the moment for some reason. I wish that there was something else. Oh, maybe I should be over here. The moment we start thinking about where we're going later. We start to withdraw from that moment. Ill will. I mean, there's been tons of classes where I've been like, I hate my teacher. That shows up, frustration even, really a deep, profound anger will show up within me in the class somehow. It's something that they're saying or doing that will agitate that, and then if I feed it, it grows. I learned, again, very quickly, early on, to not feed it. Okay, Debbie, you're here now. This is your practice today to overcome this, whatever it is that's showing up for you. So, and the same thing with the sloth and torpor. I mean, there's so many times this happens even before the yoga class, where you're talking yourself into doing it. And there's 50 reasons not to. I don't want to, I'm super tired, I don't even know if I could. And, and I've been there a zillion times where I would just talk myself into getting into the room and just, Debbie, you can sleep on the mat, I give you permission, but you're going to the room. And that would be enough, just that overcoming of whatever I allowed come in, that dullness of mind that steps in, and we start to get, and then that pulls me out of it, if I show up. And, we've talked about that before, where just when you're feeling super tired and you just get up and go for a walk, and suddenly the energy starts to come back, and we start to, or stimulate your mind in some way, reading or doing, whatever. But all of these things show up in our lives as well. So it's, the beautiful thing is when we're doing yoga and we're doing meditation, we're still enough where we can become aware of them. But when we're moving through our life, oftentimes we're just moving and all of this stuff is hitting us, but we're not becoming aware of it. We're not seeing it until it's too late. We're experiencing some sort of, setback from it. So we have the bowls going, so that's what's happening. So we'll get that healing in the background of the bowls. So one of my favorite things to consider is, and I wrote about this recently on my Facebook profile, but all of us desire, again, freedom and liberation, and a lot of us desire this in the way of wealth. Like, we choose wealth as our freedom. We choose acknowledgement, like power, like we want people to say, to notice us. So, and we also desire that feeling of liberation, of joy, and most of us want to then pass on into this, overcome samsara, the cycles of birth and death, and just reach other bliss, right? I mean, some of us are wanting that. And so the Buddha says that the way to do that is there's these 4 things that we should go for. So instead of focusing on the wealth and focusing on, the desire for acknowledgement and power, you should focus on virtue, faith, and generosity, and the most important one, so virtue, faith, generosity, and wisdom. And when he's referring to wisdom, he's referring to these. Acknowledgement of these. So the wise person notices when these are in their way, when these are coming into your consciousness. So wisdom really means becoming aware of the hindrances as they're showing up and being able to conquer them before they grow. Conquer them and overcome them, and then that's how, eventually you find your liberation, you find your freedom, that, ultimately everything will be bestowed upon you is the idea. And, the wealth is just, again, we don't have to think about it in monetary terms. Just you'll feel bliss. So what else would we want? So the idea is, can I start to acknowledge when these things are showing up and knock them off? Ill will, restlessness, sloth, torpor, sensory desire, and doubt. And so, do you guys have any thoughts about any of this so far? Questions, concerns, experiences, maybe, where these things have shown up?
I do experience the restless a lot. My mind, and I have this horrible feeling when I'm just resting or nurturing myself that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, and I get anxious about it.
Yeah.
I have to do something. I have to nurture myself.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And then I kind of balance that with the sloth and torpor. And sometimes I'm just dead and say, okay, I deserve this. So it's...
Yeah. So, those two are the ones that play with each other, right?
Yeah.
Because you're either in one or the other if you're in these extremes. The idea is to find the center line. So yeah, again, what we're after, and when you've conquered all of these things, you find yourself in the space where the mind is bright. This is what the Buddha says, and you see clearer. So this is why people sit and meditate, and when it's like the simplest things. Well, you lose your train of thought, or you suddenly feel blocked, and again, I'm going through that sickness, so I'm dealing with a little bit of that. But you'll have this bright mind if you're in that space of having conquered all these things. If we're sitting in meditation and we're noticing these things as they arise, and you come into this peaceful state, and in that space, it's like you connect with this infinite knowledge and ether, and your mind is clear, and so much more can be accomplished. And this is where, when he's saying wisdom is noticing these 5 things, well, ask yourself, would you, if somebody was super angry, pissed off person, are you going to ask them for advice? Is that your person you're going to go through for some wise advice? Somebody who's just flying off the handle and super irritated? Or somebody who's really in desire? Well, somebody who's in desire, they're focusing on themselves. They want to feed their needs. So, they might say, yeah, go do it if somehow it benefits them. So, these people aren't going to be necessarily in a state of wisdom if they're being affected by the 5 hindrances. So our goal is, again, to clear the 5 hindrances, experiences this bright mind. And this is the way I live my life. So this is who I am 1,000,000,000%. So I can tell you, from personal experience, how this works. Like the mind becomes so clear, and it's almost like I would say, I tell people all the time, like I'm just a conduit, like just information flows through me, things I didn't even know. Suddenly I become more energized, I'm more passionate, I have this clear view of where I'm going, what I'm doing, all of that. When we can clear doubt, doesn't that make sense? So the Buddha also would put all of these as different, like he kind of gives some different metaphors. And with doubt, he talks about it like being on a long journey. Because if you're on a super long journey, at some point you're going to have doubt. Like, are we going to get there? Like, what's going to happen? I don't know. What's the end game here? Because I got to know, and those thoughts start to arise. Does this person even know where we're going? Like, are they even... That shows up when we're on this long, long journey. And if we view our lives this way, And if you're in doubt, that's a really terrible place to be. Ill will, well, this word in itself speaks to how ill will shows up. Anger, frustration shows up in what I'm experiencing, illness. It doesn't necessarily have to create an illness within you, but that's what it's affecting you, as if you're experiencing an illness. Somebody who's fully angry, it's the same thing as being taken over with some sort of disease. You're dis-ease, you're out of ease, you're in discomfort, and it's affecting your body and your mind and everything in that way. Sensory desire is kind of like shackles, slavery. It's the way that it's a word, a term. You're being held bondage. Restlessness is the same. Similar. It is also sort of a state of bondage, and sloth and torpor is just like stagnancy. It is, everything. Nothing can happen in that space. And for some reason I was going to go into the Ayurvedic terms, but I'm not going to, because we're going to stick here. So basically, somebody who's experiencing these things, it's like being on a long journey while you're sick and you're in bondage and you're like, right, slavery and all this stuff. So imagine how good it feels if you can get rid of all that. Then you arrive and you free yourself and you're liberated and you're healthy and you're well and you're bright. So that's why he uses those metaphors to describe that, because then you can really see how these things are impacting you, whether or not you realize it. So, and in your life right now, you probably are experiencing at least one or more of these hindrances. I mean,
Just going back to sensory desire, do you think that there's some sort of healthy level of sensory desire, like a couple in a relationship? And
Yeah.
So how do you distinguish the healthy?
Yeah. And that's something, again, I'm still working on trying to ponder. Because absolutely, like, sensory desire can be, in that way. There's a way to so I'm going back to the yogic terms. And in yoga, brahmacharya is one of the yamas. And so it is abstaining from sex, right? So it's the same thing. Abstaining from any desires, basically, or from allowing yourself to be pulled into desire, but only in a way that the desire becomes unhealthy. So if you can keep things in moderation, and you can do things in a way that honors you and is somehow supporting the growth of your spirit and elevating your consciousness, and that is something where it gets tricky, because you have to be aware, you have to be fully present to it. Is this sensory desire pulling me away from myself? Am I noticing the impact of the payback of the loan? Oh, that was the other thing that, again, this is also like you owe somebody money or whatever, right? There's always that debt. And so when we're free from the debt, it feels good to not have the debt. Well, most desire is going to have the fallback. So there has to be a way that you enter into it where you feel that connection of, no, this is somehow adding to me versus taking from me,
So it's not a distraction, in other words. It's
Yes.
an enhancement to your life, but not a distraction from reaching a higher state of consciousness.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there's an enhancement in some way, what if that person comes to you and somehow that person actually helps to elevate you into a higher consciousness? So then, and through that desire, like people will sit with gurus, right? And because they sit in that space and they feel pure. So in that space, and there's a love there, there's a desire there, that's really strong. I want to be at the feet of my guru because I feel a certain way in that space. Okay, but can I also feel whole without that? Do I need that in my life? Or when it's gone, do I feel empty? Okay, well now we got to notice that, because now it's become something that, as a debt we have to pay back. So just noticing, how does it come about? Does it come from a high place? That's my take on it. And again, this is something I'm still working on myself, and in that way, trying to figure out a way that could be, you know. I would love to know. That was my question to Shushi. Just didn't get answered. Any other thoughts or ideas around that? I want to make sure I covered all of it. I feel like we did. We did good. You guys feel like you have a better idea of what these hindrances are, and have you like experiencing them in your life? And like if you next time you go to do yoga or sit down and do a meditation, or even in your life, honestly, just watching that and saying and viewing it. So the reason, again, they call it the 5 enemies is because then we're looking at it from a state of the 5 enemies are, now you give them a personification, and maybe you notice the people that are showing up to be that for you, right? To get you angry, right? It's not necessarily that it's that person's fault, and that's what we want to do. Well, Debbie, of course I'm pissed. This guy did this to me, you know? Okay, yeah, it's true maybe that happened. Are you feeding it attention now? You know, and so now you're giving that. And so again, those hindrances, those people are going to show up. All of those things are going to show up constantly. You're going to be driving. You're going to be pissed because that person cut you off. Now it's how do you react? Do you feed it? And you have a choice there. You don't have to. You can turn away from it and you can find your center again. And so those things I talked about as ways to counter it. And I really believe that the meditation is like a go-to for all of it. If you practice that once a day, and you can just Google how to do a meditation, and there's this very specific way. You get into a breathing pattern to center yourself, and you focus, and then how to focus the energy around the heart, and how to move that energy through your body, and to feel love, feel compassion, feel kindness, and then direct it. I used to do it in a way where I would feel, and this also works for all of these, sloth and torpor. A really profound way to elevate your energy, and especially when you're sick like me, is visualize light. When you're meditating, visualize light. That's why they do light therapy now. People are getting hip to this. Like if you sit under the light and you just let the light drink it in, it really does something to your body. It's like why sunshine. Sunshine is another, FYI, prana elevator, right? We feel way more energized in the sunlight. I mean, and so light in general, if we just close your eyes and visualize it, and visualize light moving through you, that will help to energize you. But what I used to do is, and I still do this all the time, it's one of my main meditations, is I start and do a particular breathing set, and I'd love to show you guys this at some time if you haven't already done it with me. And then I imagine light coming through the crown of my head. I just let it pour down into my body. I fill myself up. I imagine myself in a cocoon of light, floating light. Every cell in my body is being nurtured by this light. I feel myself. It's in that space. None of these hindrances can exist. Super present, because I'm focusing on my body, focusing on light. How can I be thinking about something I'm pissed about and also thinking about myself being filled with light? You know what I mean? Your brain, if we direct our brain, those are good ways to, as well, to deal with restlessness when you're trying to come into a state of meditation. If you're super restless and, you know, you've already done some of the things to try and settle down, a good way is occupy your mind. So when you come into meditation, or you come to just sit down and maybe count your breaths. So now you're giving your mind something to do, and it will help to anchor, also mantra is a really good way to do it. So, and that comes back to loving kindness again. If you did a meditation where you're just focusing the mind, giving it a project. And so for me, it's always the project, I'm going to fill myself with light. And then I'm going to think about love. And then I'm going to feel love. And I'm going to feel compassion. I'm going to feel that energy of love and compassion. I'm going to fill myself with that. And then I'm going to imagine this light flowing out from me. And usually I'll direct it to everybody and everything that's in front of me, across the whole world. Just extend it as far as I can, imagine it extending. Then I send it behind me. I send it to the left of me, to the right of me, above me, and below me, until I feel as though I have just given love to every single thing. And then I imagine particular people that are showing up in my life or my experience that may be pulling me away. may be causing me to be restless, or situations. Could be situations that are a struggle in my life, worries, things that are really heavy in my mind, and I'll put them into the light, and I'll just give them love too, and they dissolve into it. It's like everything dissolves in that space. Think of the people that are causing you stress, it dissolves. It's a really powerful thing to do. And when you get into that habit, suddenly you start to live in that way. It's really hard to slip into anger when you're so used to filling yourself with the compassion and kindness and love, it's harder to slip into those spaces. So, anything else? Yeah. Thank you guys so much for doing this and being a part of this. I'm so grateful. Bearing with me.